Hey, it's Rachel Cooke, your modern mentor. I'm the founder of Lead Above Noise, where we help leaders activate performance and engagement without burning out. Whether it's boot camps, keynotes, or pulse checks, we help teams achieve meaningful change. Just let us know what you need. So, speaking of things you might need, how's your confidence these days? I'm asking because it's something that's coming up a lot lately. Like people around me, varying ages, varying amounts of tenure, different industries, they just seem to be struggling. And while I get it, no judgment, I also think we deserve better. We deserve to feel great about the work that we're doing and the impacts that we're making, even when we know we're imperfect. So, my client, Dave, recently had one of those kind of epic moments at work a few months ago. Dave's the kind of guy who usually has it all together. He's sharp, proactive, you name it. But he was giving a big presentation on a project he'd been working on for months. It was high stakes, and he felt pretty prepared. But on game day, things got a little clunky. His slides looked kind of wonky when they loaded, and he stumbled over his words. And in the Q&A, he couldn't answer a few critical questions that came up from senior leaders. When the meeting ended, one of his colleagues even pulled him aside and said, "Next time, make sure you do your homework." Dave left that meeting feeling pretty rough. And here's what we worked through together to help him recover. 5 steps that I think anyone could use to help turn a confidence hit into a comeback. First, start with a clear-eyed review. Like, what actually happened? When confidence takes a hit, we tend to focus on how awful it felt rather than on what actually happened. But the reality is, feelings don't tell the full story. So the first step is to pull back from the emotion and get a clear view of just the facts. Write down exactly what happened, play by play, without any embellishment or judgment. Because we always make things worse when we editorialize. "I didn't clearly explain how X leads to Y" is very different than "Jane thought I was an idiot when I didn't clearly explain how X leads to Y." An honest assessment of the facts gives us something to work with. Assuming other people's feelings or reactions, not so much. So Dave did this exercise, listing each moment he could remember from the presentation. Yes, he stumbled. Yes, he didn't have all the right answers. But there were things that he did do right, like presenting his initial findings clearly and fielding some unexpected questions as well. By focusing on facts instead of feelings, you're separating the emotion from the event, which keeps you from turning one rough moment into a story about yourself as a failure. This perspective shift is key to seeing where things really stand. Next, extract key insights. What was missing and why? Once you have the facts, dig into the details and ask yourself, what could have been done differently? Look for specific gaps like missing preparation, overlooked details, or unmet expectations. And also, make a little space for sometimes bleep just happens to all of us, and sometimes we just need to own it. For Dave, this was a tough but important step. He realized that he had rehearsed the presentation but hadn't done a technical run-through, so he didn't know how his slides were going to look on the projection. He knew his facts and data cold, but he hadn't anticipated or even asked for ahead of time the tough questions that came from senior leaders. He did a lot of prep work, but not enough to anticipate the audience's needs. This isn't about criticizing yourself, but about identifying real insights and owning and correcting the misses next time. Look at where you may have missed the mark and what exactly went wrong so you can be smarter about it next time. Maybe you missed the chance to check in with a mentor. Maybe you underestimated a detail. Zero in on specific gaps so you'll know exactly what to focus on in the future. Next, reconnect with your strengths and leverage them. After identifying areas for growth, it's time to remind yourself of what you do bring to the table. We tend to focus on what went wrong, but true recovery also comes from acknowledging where we shine. In Dave's case, he's great at simplifying complex ideas, so he decided to build that skill directly into his next project, this time prepping a clear, simple set of slides and practicing his messaging until it felt effortless. Reconnecting with your core strength not only bolsters your confidence, but gives you a foundation to lean on as you move forward. So ask yourself, what are your signature strengths, and how can you use those in your next project or presentation? Let this strength inform your approach moving forward. It's a real confidence anchor. Next, take targeted action to fill in the gaps. Now that you have a full view of what happened, where you can improve, and where you naturally excel, It's time to focus on specific actions. Instead of simply preparing better, define exactly what you'll do to avoid a repeat. Maybe it's practicing in front of colleagues, running through a Q&A, or doing a dry run with a mentor who can give you feedback. For his next presentation, Dave decided to take 3 specific actions. He lined up a mock Q&A session with a trusted peer, practiced anticipating questions senior leaders might ask, and gave himself time to practice each section out loud. Each step was purposeful, building his skill and filling in the gaps he identified. In the end, not only was he ready for questions from his stakeholders, but they barely had any for him because he'd been so thorough in anticipating those questions, he'd actually already answered them in his presentation. Remember, this is not about reinventing yourself, just refining and strengthening your process. Focus on concrete actions that allow you to see your own progress and improve in areas that matter most. And finally, focus on the future. Reframe and reclaim your confidence. This is the most important step. Remember, this moment doesn't define you. Mistakes happen, and every single misstep is an opportunity to learn and grow. Remind yourself of your larger why you're in this role, what impact you're here to make, and what motivates you to keep pushing forward. Dave reframed his presentation as a learning moment, one that would help him become an even stronger communicator and leader. Instead of letting it stay a confidence blow, he chose to use it as a catalyst for learning and growth. And ultimately, that's what brought his confidence back. In fact, in a recent interview I did with Erica Ayers-Badan, she talks about how when you use work wisely and to your advantage, it's essentially an education that you get paid to have when you extract every bit of learning you can. So don't get stuck in the past. Remember that every misstep adds a layer to your skills, resilience, and readiness for the next opportunity. Embrace what you've learned, hold your head high, and step forward with renewed confidence. Join me next week for another great episode. Until then, visit my website at leadabovenoise.com if your workplace could use an activation boost. Whether it's a leader boot camp, a keynote, or a pulse check, you choose. You can follow Modern Mentor on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much for listening and have a successful week. Modern Mentor is a quick and dirty tips podcast. It's audio engineered by Dan Fauerbend. Our director of podcasts is Brandon Getches. Our podcast and advertising operations specialist is Morgan Christensen. Our digital operations specialist is Holly Hutchings. Our marketing and publicity associate is Davina Tomlin. And our marketing contractor is Nathaniel Hoops.